So good afternoon all together. My name is Irmgard Hein and I'm the Deputy Director of HEAS. And Imo is not here today because he is on a field trip in Denmark. So the story I'm going to tell you is about the archaeological exploration and visualization of an Egyptian palace area from the very early 18th dynasty. The palace was located at the fringe of the eastern Nile Delta, and in this area was already in the Middle Kingdom a settlement constructed by the kings of the 12th dynasty in order to enforce the border region. However, Asiatic people infiltrated from the northeast in the Middle Bronze Age, and they settled down, and a sort of mixed culture emerged here. And during the phase of the Second Intermediate Period, also the capital of the Hyksos, which we see here now, the extension, had here its center. This town was named Avaris. After the expulsion of the Hyksos and the conquest of Avaris by the military kings of the early 18th dynasty in red, and presumably after a short period of military campsite, the Egyptians start to build huge palaces in mud bricks. These palaces are located within the area of the former Hyksos enclosure wall, which we see to the left. However, to the right, we see the 18th dynasty area. And the substructures of these platforms were excavated by the Austrian Archaeological Institute Cairo under Manfred Bitak from 1989 till 1998. Of particular interest was the small platform F for our project and the small structures surrounding it, which probably belonged to a workshop compound where fragments of Minoan frescoes were found. For instance, a Toreador fresco was already reconstructed by Bitak and Nano Marinatos in 2007. Detailed investigation of the stratigraphy and the integration of the finds, however, was undertaken only in our project, which was funded by the Jubiläumsfonds of the Austrian National Bank. The entire field recording is stored in the Teledava archive of the ÖAI at the Austrian Academy of Sciences and was integrated into a GIS database. Large parts of this painstaking data work, also the profile revision and preparation of data, for instance, of the profile drawings, was done by my colleague Sandra Müller, who also reworked all these drawings for the correlation with the database. The methodological approach was then to connect the data within ArcGIS, to structure and to outline the data and to combine the field records with find spots of the objects. The find spots are also linked with the object data that are preserved in external databases in order to make the object documentation accessible via the find spot. And we see here to the right, for instance, the dots indicating the find positions and also some of the objects which should be accessible in the database. Then, after completing this, within ArcGIS scene, a volumetric dimension is given to the single structures, and the structures are elevated within the individual field areas. The combination of all these field areas gives us then a complete picture. As an example, I would like to demonstrate the integration of details in an early level to the north of the palace platform, which is the so-called garden level. This garden level was considered in early interpretations by Bitak as pre-palace level from the Hyksos period. To the right, we see here also an old model, first reconstruction of the palace, and you will see the difference at the end. The analysis of the stratigraphy and of the finds, however, has led to the conclusion that this level of the garden, where we see here flower pots, true flower pots, for instance, is probably already early 18th dynasty and existing contemporary with the palace. A visualization of all data was transformed by Michi Klein from 7 Reasons Company, where we see now here a possible scenario of the garden existing contemporary with the palace platform. The dating of the later workshop complex, which is overlying this garden, is particularly important because the superstructures of the platform have not been preserved, but the frescoes were found within these workshop areas. So the frescoes clearly belong to the former decoration of the palace rooms. However, the fine positions of the frescoes are clear termini postquem, and we can date that clearly into the Thutmoside period. The workshop compound overlying the garden level was attached to the access ramp of the platform. So it was probably created at a time when the palace was already out of function. A difficulty, however, is the access to the ramp, which was ending in the older Hyksos enclosure wall. However, this enclosure wall was probably already cut down. The interior of the palace was reconstructed with a sort of patio, as it is known also as the case at other palaces in Egypt, for instance, the Palace of Apries at Memphis. The roof construction was clearly a flat roof, but we had to decide how the incidence of light was directed into the interior. Most likely, there was an elevation with side light openings just above the throne room, here at the back end of the platform. The side entrance in this model is very hypothetical, and we have no proof for such a door. However, the interior to the throne room might have looked similar to the throne room at Knossos, where a griffon fresco probably framed the throne. This one is hypothetically reconstructed, and the drawing, layout of the griffon drawing is done by Bitek and Marinatus. However, the room composition with the elevation of the columns is from our project. Finally, we look at Ezbet Helmi and the entire palace district, including the two palaces. Ours, Palace F, is to the right, which must have been really an impressive area. After all, the royal residence of the early 18th dynasty in the Nile Delta. And that's the end of my presentation, and I'm ready for your questions.